In the shadowed hush of the courtroom, where justice hangs by a thread, I sat unnoticed at the defense table, my fingers tracing the faded blue sparrows on the scarf that once shielded a terrified child. Across the aisle, my so-called parents laughed with their lawyer, eyes gleaming with greed for the fortune they believed was theirs. They had no idea the abandoned girl they'd discarded like luggage had risen to wield the gavel. As the bailiff's voice thundered, "All rise for the Honorable Judge Kara," their smug smiles shattered. Now, imagine your own blood betraying you for cold cash. Would you offer mercy or let the hammer fall? Hold that thought, juror, in your mind as I unravel the chilling path that brought us to this reckoning. The courtroom air was thick with anticipation, a palpable tension that clung to every breath like fog on a winter morning. I, Kara, adjusted the scarf in my lap, its soft threads a silent reminder of the storm I'd weathered. Brian and Laura, my biological parents, sat there oblivious, their whispers laced with premature victory. They saw the $6 million as their due reward, not knowing the judge about to preside was the very daughter they'd forsaken. Their lawyer flashed a confident grin, but it evaporated as I rose, my robes swishing like a whisper of fate. The shock on their faces was electric, eyes widening, jaws slackening, as recognition dawned too late. I ascended the bench, my heart pounding not with fear, but with the cold resolve forged from years of silence. But let's rewind, dear jury, to the genesis of this betrayal. Picture 1998, JFK International Airport, Terminal 2. A chaotic symphony of hurried footsteps, blaring announcements, and the relentless grind of conveyor belts. Amid the frenzy, I was a small island of stillness, just 6 years old, enveloped in my grandmother's oversized blue sparrow scarf. It itched against my skin, but I clutched it like a lifeline in the sterile chill. Brian and Laura strode ahead, their faces etched with impatience, not a hint of parental concern. No hand to hold mine, no reassuring glance back. They moved like executives late for a meeting, their voices low and urgent, laced with something I couldn't yet name: calculation. "Hurry up, Kara," Laura snapped over her shoulder, her tone sharp as a whip. "You're slowing us down." My little legs scrambled to keep pace, but inside, a knot of unease twisted tighter. Why were we here? Where were we going? Questions bubbled up, but I swallowed them, too young to voice the dread creeping in. They steered me toward the oversized luggage area, a cavernous space dimly lit by flickering fluorescents. The air reeked of jet fuel, mingled with stale concessions, a nauseating brew that made my stomach churn. Massive carousels churned out suitcases, ski gear, and bulky boxes, thumping rhythmically like a heartbeat out of sync. "Wait here," Brian ordered, gesturing to a cold metal bench bolted to the floor. "Watch the bags. We'll grab the tickets and be right back." His eyes avoided mine, focused instead on the distant exit signs glowing like false promises. "How long?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the din. Laura didn't even turn fully, her gaze scanning the crowd. "Just count to 800, sweetie. By the time you're done, we'll be here." It sounded simple, a game to pass the time. I nodded, pulling the scarf tighter around my shoulders, its sparrows seeming to flutter in sympathy. 1, 2, 3, I began, my tiny fingers tapping against my knee. The carousel spun on, disgorging luggage in endless procession. Families reunited with joyful hugs, Travelers grunted as they hauled their burdens away. But as I reached 100, a subtle shift occurred. The crowd began to thin, voices fading like echoes in an emptying hall. My counting slowed, each number heavier than the last. What if they forgot? No, they wouldn't. Parents don't forget. At 200, the bustle waned further, leaving pockets of emptiness that swallowed the noise. My heart quickened, a flutter matching the scarf's imagined wings. Internal whispers started. Maybe they're stuck in line. Maybe the tickets are complicated. By 300, doubt gnawed deeper. The air felt heavier, pressing against my chest. I scanned the area, hoping for a glimpse of their familiar forms, but only strangers hurried by, indifferent to the small girl alone on the bench. 400, 500. The carousel's rhythm slowed, items appearing less frequently, the mechanical hum winding down like a dying engine. Panic flickered in my mind. Should I move? Call out? But fear rooted me, the scarf my only armor. What if I left and they returned? I'd be the one in trouble. At 600, the place grew eerily quiet, the dim lights casting long shadows that danced mockingly. My breaths came shallow, eyes darting to every corner. They have to come back. They promised. On the screen, Paige leaned close to the camera, adjusting her hair in the lens reflection. "Jasmine!" she called, voice tinny through the speakers, but still carrying that grating edge. "We know you're in there! Open the gate!" Christina stepped forward, nudging her aside. "Jasmine, we're ready to put the past behind us. We forgive you." The words landed absurdly in my quiet kitchen. They were standing in the rain, uninvited, with a moving truck, and offering me forgiveness. For a heartbeat, I almost laughed. Then I zoomed in. Christina's Chanel jacket, 6 years old, cuffs fraying. The Vuitton bag, scuffed, unrepaired. Paige's sneakers, muddy, creased. The illusion cracked open. They weren't here from strength. They were here because they had nothing left. The buzzer sounded again, sharper, more demanding, as if volume alone could force the steel gates to yield. On the high-definition feed, Paige pressed her face closer to the intercom lens, rain streaking her cheeks like deliberate tears. She checked her reflection once more, then spoke with that practiced urgency she'd always summoned when the spotlight dimmed. "Jasmine, seriously, we're getting soaked. Mom's jacket is ruined. Open up! We need to talk!" Christina stepped into frame beside her, shoulders squared despite the drizzle darkening her tweed. "We've come a long way," she said, voice modulated into something almost maternal. "It's time to be a family again. We forgive you for walking away. Let us in." Forgive me. The phrase landed like acid on old scars. They stood there, uninvited, truck-loaded, entitlement dripping heavier than the rain, and offered absolution for my escape. I studied their faces on the screen. Paige's knockoff tracksuit clung wetly. Christina's bag hung limp, its once proud monogram faded. The appraisal in their eyes had shifted. No longer inspecting real estate they assumed they'd inherit, now calculating how long the drizzle would take to break me. I pressed the talk button. The outdoor speakers crackled to life. My voice emerged crisp, amplified, carrying easily over the rain. "State your business." They flinched. Paige recovered first, tossing her damp hair. "Don't play games, Jazz. We're moving in. Mom already told you. We're forgiving you. Now open the damn gate before my hair frizzes permanently." Christina's tone hardened. "Jasmine Reed, I am your mother. I am standing in the rain. Open this gate right now, or you will regret it." The old command, the same octave drop that used to make my stomach knot at age 12. I let the silence stretch, just long enough for the words to echo back at them. No. One syllable, small, final. It landed like a stone in deep water. Ripples of shock crossed their faces. "Excuse me?" Christina's benevolence evaporated. Steel returned. "You are not guests," I said evenly. "You are trespassers. You have 5 minutes to turn that truck around and leave my property before I call private security." Paige laughed, short, incredulous. "You think you're better than us just because you bought a fancy house? You're still the same difficult girl who ruined everything for me." "And you," I replied, voice flat, "are still the same person wearing knockoff Gucci in a stranger's driveway. Goodbye." I released the button. The feed stayed live. They stared at the intercom box as if it had personally insulted them. Paige's mouth worked soundlessly for a second. Then the fury broke. She yanked her phone from her pocket, not to call for help, not to find a hotel. She snapped on a ring light attachment, smooth, automatic, rehearsed, wiped rain from her cheeks, smoothed her expression into trembling vulnerability. The mask slipped into place. Heartbroken little sister, abandoned by cruel rich sibling. She went live. I didn't need audio to know the script. Variations had played in my childhood living room for years. Open hearts, long drive, forgiveness offered, only to be met with a locked gate and a cold mansion looming like a villain's lair. Within seconds, my phone, resting silent on the marble, began to vibrate. One buzz, another, then a steady, angry hum that rattled against stone. I walked over. Notifications cascaded. Texts from cousins I hadn't spoken to since high school. DMs from strangers. Missed calls from aunts who once called me difficult. "How could you do this to your mother?" "They're family, Jasmine." "Money changed you." The flying monkeys had launched. Paige was painting victimhood in real time. The internet lapped it up. Wet mother, crying sister, silent glass fortress in the background. No one saw the $15,000 stolen credit. No one saw 13 years of deliberate silence. No one saw the frayed cuffs or muddy sneakers. A younger me would have panicked, would have felt the collective judgment like physical weight and opened the gate just to stop the noise, would have traded peace for approval. But I was no longer that girl. We called one witness, Lily. My half-sister, the child born after me, the one who'd grown up in the shadow of my disappearance. She walked to the stand with measured steps, her face pale, eyes shadowed by exhaustion and old pain. No dramatics from her, just quiet truth. She swore in, then began. "I was only 3 when Kara vanished," Lily said, voice steady despite the tremor beneath. "But I remember how they used it. Every time money was tight or someone asked questions, they'd bring up the lost daughter. Church collections poured in, poor grieving parents. Neighbors dropped off casseroles, offered hugs, wrote checks. It became currency." She paused, swallowing hard. They never looked for her. Not really. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Brian shifted uncomfortably. Laura's hands twisted the tissue into knots. Lily continued, unflinching. The week she disappeared, they were at the casino. Almost every night. I found the receipts years later, hidden in a drawer. While police searched airports and put out alerts, they were playing slots and blackjack. She reached into the evidence box her attorney handed her, pulling out a thick stack of faded casino slips, date-stamped from the very days following my abandonment. The courtroom lights caught the ink. Timestamps late into the night, amounts wagered in the hundreds. Gasps. A juror covered her mouth. The forensic accountant we'd hired had cross-referenced them earlier. Every receipt matched the timeline perfectly. Then came the killing blow. My lawyer approached the bench, presenting the 1999 settlement agreement and the sworn affidavit. I watched as the documents passed to the presiding judge in the original case. No, wait. This was my courtroom now, but the memory of reading them first time burned fresh. The affidavit stated in black and white, the minor child, Kara, is presumed deceased following disappearance on or about date. Signed by Brian and Laura under penalty of perjury. They'd collected $600,000 from the airline, declared me dead, and moved on. The judge, me, leaned forward slightly. Silence stretched, taut as wire. Brian's face drained of color. Laura stared at the papers as if they might vanish if she blinked. You have two options before this court, I said, voice low but carrying to every corner. Either you committed fraud in 1999 by falsely claiming your daughter's death for financial gain, or you are committing perjury now by insisting she was never dead and that you searched for her all these years. Which is it? No answer came. Only the sound of Brian's chair scraping as he half rose, then sank back, defeated. I rose from the bench, descended the steps slowly, deliberately. The scarf remained folded on the defense table, but its weight felt different now. No longer a shield, but a witness. I stopped before them, close enough to see the sweat beading on their foreheads. You sold me, I said, each word precise, cold as winter steel. You looked at a 6-year-old girl and decided she was worth less than your freedom, your gambling, your new life. You declared me dead for $600,000. And now, because someone saw worth in me, someone who gave me a home, love, a future, you want to claw it back. But the girl you abandoned, she's gone. What stands here is the ghost of her. And ghosts can haunt. I will use every legal avenue, every precedent, every ounce of justice this system allows to make sure you pay for what you did. Their lawyer stammered an objection, but it died in his throat. The gallery held its collective breath. I returned to the bench, lifted the gavel. The sound when it fell was thunder in the stillness. Case dismissed with prejudice. Before the echo faded, bailiffs moved. Handcuffs clicked around wrists that once refused to hold mine. Brian and Laura were led away amid flashes of cameras outside the doors, indicted for perjury, fraud under review. The community that once pitied them now recoiled. Whispers turned to condemnation. Invitations dried up. Their house went quiet. I didn't keep the $6 million for luxury. Every cent fueled the Baggage Claim Foundation, legal aid, counseling, advocacy for foster children caught in the system's cracks. No child would ever sit alone on a bench again, counting to 800 while the world walked away. 6 months later, sunlight spilled through the windows of a small Manhattan coffee shop. Across the table from me sat Lily. She'd quit her old job, traded uncertainty for purpose. Now she ran operations at the foundation, her laugh lighter, freer. We talked about cases, about kids we'd helped, about the future we were building together, not as half-sisters bound by blood and betrayal, but as allies choosing each other. I glanced down at the blue sparrow scarf draped over the chair back. No longer scratchy armor against a cruel world, just fabric, soft with age and memory. In the gentle hum beneath the coffee shop chatter, the clink of cups, murmur of voices, I felt the quiet settle. Not the suffocating silence of abandonment, but peace. The debt had been paid, not in vengeance, but in justice. And finally, I was free.